Hi, everybody. Welcome to the 101 level training for where are we, August 2nd. So this is basically a lot of entry level stuff on how to start using your collective access version for the Connecticut Collections Project. So we're going to start with a lot of really basic stuff today, and we'll get in as deep to things as we need to, depending on what questions you have. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat. You can raise your hand or whatever as well, but Dana will also be keeping an eye on the chat to have anything that pops up. I'll try to, but I'm on a laptop, so I have a smaller screen, so I may not see it right away. But we'll try to get to all of those by the end of the session. Because we're a little bit longer today, I'm going to try to stop partway through so we can take a break and go stretch our legs. And I'm setting my alarm to do that right now. So hopefully you'll hear a really weird alarm in a bit. Okay, there we go. I'll keep an eye on the time. So welcome everybody. Most of you have received your own systems. If you've not received your own system, you can always go in and play around in the sandbox, or even if you have your system and are just not sure and don't feel like you want to mess anything up in your system, you can always go play in the sandbox. This system has been set up as kind of like a test trial system. It's available to everybody. It's always the same login and password for folks. And there's real-ish data in there. It's a lot of the old data that I uploaded from the Fairfield Museum back when we first joined, back in 2016, 2017. I put some real-ish data in there, not cleaned up, so it's really messy, kind of on purpose. But there's a lot of data in there, so there's records to play with and things you can do in there without fear of doing anything bad, because it's not real anymore. So you can add, edit, delete new records however you want to do it. So anytime you're logging into your website, you do not have to be on a particular computer or any device. You can do it from PCs, Macs, phones, any tablets, anything with an internet connection and a browser. You do not necessarily need to have any particular browser. Some work better than others, but for the most part, like Firefox and Chrome work fine. Haven't had any problems with any of the other ones. If you ever do have a problem, let us know and we'll see if there's anything else going on. But usually you can be on any browser and it's fine. So you can get to anything as long as you have an internet connection. All of the systems are kind of set up with the same URL up at the top. You're going to have your username or your institution usually at the front. You'll get that information from us if you don't have it already. And then it's going to be like yourinstitution.ctcollections.org. So for the sandbox, it's exactly that, sandbox.ctcollections.org. When you get there, you're going to see a box like this that'll have the collective access at the top and usually your institution's name right below it. And that's just for your use. It doesn't mean if your name is not quite what you want. We usually have talked to you about this beforehand, so it should be what you want it to be, but it doesn't really affect anything else like public portal or anything. So so that'll be there. You'll see the username block and a password block. So we will also give you your initial username. It's usually going to be something like your institution's name and say admin, like mine is Fairfield admin for my overall institution name. Once you get that, you should pick somebody or actually a couple people at your institution to kind of be the system administrator, to have administrative level rights. That basically lets you do anything in the system, as opposed to someone who is a volunteer that you want to make like a cataloger level. They don't have some permissions to do things like delete records or things in the system. We'll get into that a little bit more for setup. So I highly recommend making your own password. To get into the system, you're going to put in your administrator. For the sandbox, for your information, the username is always administrator. And the password is, and Dana can put it in the chat, Dana, if you don't mind, is Trylon39. So it's TRYLON 39, and everybody can use that. And it goes in as administrator level, so you can do everything. So I'm just going to click login. So when you first log into the system, if you're successful, if you're not successful, it'll come up and say like just login invalid or something like that. So try typing it out again a couple times. We try not to make your names and your passwords too weird, but sometimes they're long enough that you need to go through and type it a couple times. I know I do on mine, which is annoying. So once you type that in and you get entry to your system, you're going to see this. You're going to see CollectiveAccess. You're going to see some things across the top that say new, find, manage, import, and will usually see this count here. This landing page screen is customized to your own login. So this is 100%. You can customize this page however you want. And we'll get into that a little bit later too. And I've also got a couple office hours sessions recorded on that. For those of you who may not have attended or are very, very new, we run a monthly like office hours, kind of like a, college. The professor always had time when you can come and talk to them. So we do a little focus on a hint, a tip. It's kind of a training session on a particular thing. It's announced ahead of time, and it's usually in the newsletter with the link to get to the office hours. It's the same link for all year. Those office hours are recorded and put online for you as well. Links are available on the website or on the newsletter. And it's also a good opportunity to ask live questions, whether it's on the topic we're discussing or if you have any other questions or issues that you want to go over. I don't always succeed. I try to leave some time at the end of the office hours for other questions too. But there is like a good dashboard tutorial in there. So if we don't get a chance to talk about that today, you can look for the office hours recording. So what this will tell you is it gives you this count of how many records you have in your system in each category. So the system is basically broken up into different modules. There are objects, object lots, which are basically accession lots to track your objects and your groups of objects coming in. Entities, which are people or businesses related to your objects, whether it's a donor, a former owner, a creator, a publisher, anything like that, they will get entered as an entity. And those are authority records. So it's very nice to be able to put different spellings of people's names in, and you will always, even if someone always spells their name wrong or it's weird, you'll always be able to get back to that one record, and those that record will connect to all the other ones. One thing to say about all of these, they all interconnect with each other. So you do not have to reference something within a record all the time and put like in a note, like this clock is related to the couch over in the main living room. You can connect those records and create connections that'll relate to each other to be able to see things. So occurrences is a little bit tricky. This is actually exhibits. It's just an old term that was used in previous systems, and it hasn't been updated everywhere yet. I will say it now, and I've said it a million times before, and I'll probably say it for the next million years. I keep intending to change it and never remember until I'm doing something like this. Then we have collections. Now, collections in this instance is intended to be archival collections, manuscript collections, things like that. It can be used for your own informal collections, but it's more set up to be an archival manuscript collection module. And we can go into that further as well. And there's other office hours for those too. And I have this set up. Usually series and sub-series isn't here. Those relate back to the collections and files. And that's something I just turned on previously for this. So we're going to skip talking about that for now. Object representations are any media files that are linked to an object. So any digital media that you have, a JPEG, a TIFF, a document, a spreadsheet, anything that you have that's related to a collection that you've attached a media file counts as an object representation. And it also does loans. If you loan items out or you have items on loan from people, whether it's for an exhibit or a long-term loan, you can track things like that in there. I like having this count here for a couple reasons, because it kind of gives me a snapshot of what's going on in my system, but also it offers a really quick entry point to get into your system and actually get in to start seeing records. There's a couple different ways of doing this. And because we have data in here, I'll jump in really quick. But the other thing you'll want to know is that if you're starting from scratch, you have no records anywhere, this is what this new button is for up here. And we'll talk about that in a second. So there's a couple different, the system's great because there's a couple different ways to do everything, but it can be initially confusing because there's a couple different ways to do everything. If you want to just jump in and go to an object record or one of the other records, you can click on the number in the counts. It's a little hot link. And if I click that, it'll automatically pull up all 847 records that we have in here. Currently, we're in a spreadsheet view format, and there's a couple different ways of viewing things. We'll talk about that as well. So you can go down and see things like object identifier, a related accession, a title, alternate title, descriptions, related entities, so the related people to this record, dimensions, notes, things like that. Usually there are several different types of views available that come out like out of the box. With this, there's probably like 3 or 4, maybe 5. You can create your own as you get things in and get more comfortable with the system, and think of different projects that you want to work on that you might want to look at views a little bit differently. So you can scroll up and down, it'll get down to the bottom, and you can use this bar to go all the way over to the edge. It's a little annoying because you do have to get to the bottom to do that. It's actually nice if you're on a laptop, you can use the touchpad to kind of scroll over. So sometimes it's not always ideal to, or in like tablets, you can obviously move the whole thing over. Sometimes it's not ideal to be on a laptop because you feel like you want to see more information. But in this case, it's handy to be able to move over. You can also, if you click on any of the boxes and any of the things, you can also arrow over on your regular keyboard. Like if you're on a regular PC and don't want to scroll all the way to the bottom, you can use the arrows on your keyboard to arrow back and forth. I'm doing that now. You can't see because you can only see me, but I'm arrowing back and forth and those work. And it works for up and down as well, if you want to just maneuver around without having to go to that bar at the bottom. So let me go back to that main beginning bit for a second, just to show you a different way to get in. So we're on the main one again. You're always going to see this quick search box in the upper corner. So if you have something in mind specific that you're looking for, I need to look up this costume item with this number, or I need to look up this person, you can enter that here and click the little magnifying glass, and it'll pull up associated records. The search in the system is very broad. So it's not always going to do an exact search unless you tell it to do an exact search. And that's kind of more something we can get in down the line as well, of different ways to search. But you can go in here if you ever want to pull up everything in your system. Again, you can click on this, or you can always use the asterisk. The asterisk is a wildcard that means anything. So you can use the, and I'll do a search for something specific in a second. So if you do that asterisk and click on the magnifying glass, this will get you results lists for everything in your system. Before we had just clicked on objects, this is pulling up everything. So you'll see a listing here and it'll say top 100 results for asterisk. It'll have a sort by, you can sort by the name of the item, the relevance of the ID number, but this pulls up all of the modules. So anytime you see this, it'll say objects 100, that means there's at least 100 items that came up in this search. And you can go from there. You can see some of them here if there might be something you want to look at, or you can click on this little hamburger over here. Those 3 lines usually means there's more options, basically, or it'll say full results. Anytime in the whole system, if you see this little minus box, if you click that, it means it's going to condense things. In the opposite of that, if you see the plus, when you click on the plus, it'll expand. So if you come into the system this way, and you want to see more, you can either scroll down all the way past those things to start getting to some of the other modules, or you can click that minus and you'll see everything right there. So right now there's 6 loans in here. Storage location says 100, so more than 100. The same thing with object lots. There's 7 occurrences or exhibits. Collections, there's over 100 kind of collections entries, and there's over 100 entities that are all related to this. So going into this full results, you end up kind of in the same place that we did going under that objects thing, kind of that spreadsheet view of different views of things. We can also do from here to give you a couple different, actually, let me back up. I'm not going to get into that part yet. I will in a minute. We're going to talk about different types of ways to view things. If you don't have anything in your system yet, and you want to put in a new thing, you need to start off, and we're going to catalog something on my table. So we're going to say we're going to put this mug in from where my husband works. So we're going to put in new. You'll get a bunch of suggestions of how you can enter this thing, whether it's in a lot, and again with lots, think accession lots. And when you select something, it'll give you the option of what type of thing that is. So if you say lot, is it a bequest, found in collection, a gift, a purchase, a transfer? Those are your options there. And I'll just do these really quick, and then we'll go back to putting this object in. When you do object, it'll ask you if it's an audio file or an audio related item, a book, a document, a moving image, a physical object, or a still image. Currently, these are your only options, and they usually pretty much work well for everything. So find the thing that is closest to what you're putting in. There's other ways of entering classifications that are further along, but this is just to get you started. If you click down entity, it'll pop out and say individual or organization. Collection will start out with series, subseries, and file. You're usually going to start out with a series of things. Exhibition, it's just an exhibition. So there's very limited fields on exhibition, which is nice because you don't really need a lot. There's other ways of adding information about an exhibit in that record. Storage location, it's a storage location. You can create a new one of those. And then a loan, it wants to know if it's an incoming loan, something you're taking in, or an outgoing loan. For something like an incoming loan, if it's a long-term loan that you want to keep track of, there's further ways to do that down there to denote that it's something long-term. So we're going to go up to object. So putting this mug in, we'll say this was a gift. And then you'll go to this next screen. And we'll go over some of the fields in more detail later, but I just more so want to get you familiar with how everything works and relates. You'll see an initial screen. You'll look over here in the top left. It'll tell you what you're doing. You're creating a new gift. It'll give you kind of a basic info and a couple information things here, and it'll be blank down here. And actually, did I do object? Did I do? There we go. That's better. I accidentally landed on lot, and I'm not going to do lots today. I'm going to more focus on just individual records for now anyway. So again, it'll still tell you where you are. You're creating a new physical object. It'll give you some information on here on the left-hand side, and it'll start off with basic information, and all the rest of it's grayed out. So, and all of these fields are available over on the right-hand side, and you can scroll up and down those. You will not be able to click onto anything from over here until you put information here and save the record. So we're going to make this mug is going to be 2024.13.0 because it's just one mug. So I'm putting in a .0. There's some information in any field. You just need bit of information in one field to be able to save it. So you click save. And now you'll see that all of these options on the left are now black, and you're able to click on them and move around to put in different aspects of this record. It does automatically, if you don't fill in like title, I think it only does it on title, it automatically just puts a blank there. And you can fill that in later, or however you want to do it. You do not have to fill in every single field that is available, because there's a lot of fields there. Most of them are very useful. Some of them aren't very useful most of the time. So you only have to fill in whatever is relevant to you at this point in time. And you can always come back and update and go as you go through things. One thing I will point out is down here at the bottom, after all these pages of options, is a log down at the bottom. And this will tell you what's been done to this record since it was created. So we can see right here that the date is today, the user is the collective access administrator, and then all of these fields were created when we created this record, including this, we added the object identifier. So as we go through and add more information and save, you'll see changes to the log. So I'm going to go back up here. We're going to talk about this in a second, but we're going to go back here to the basic information page. And I'm just going to put this in because the blank is bothering me. And I'm going to put an alternate title of coffee mug. And we can save that. So that's, the very basics of how you're getting started putting things in and adding them to records. Let me do one other way of getting into the system and getting to record and searching, and then we'll come back to this. So now we don't even have to go back. If you ever want to get back to that main page, always just click on the collective access and it'll send you back there. In order to do new searches or look for other things, you don't have to do that. You can just do the search up here for a certain thing, or you can go up into the find, and it's got all of your module options here, the same as in new: lots, objects, entities, collections, exhibitions, storage, locations, loans. Or it'll actually say your last quick search. So if you searched for Bugs Bunny, it'll say like that was your last one that you did. When you go into the search, again, I always just use this quick one, and it seems to work the best. As you get more advanced and you are doing more particular tasks, you'll want to get more into specific searches, but so just know that's available. So you can always, you're going to get the little kick out. So if you float on objects, it'll pop out with basic search, advanced search, search builder, browse. There's more office hours recordings about these. If you're like, I don't know what I want to do, you can just click right on that objects and it'll send you to a search screen. Up in the left again, you're going to see where you are. This is always a good place to keep track of what screen you're on. So we're on search objects. It gives you an option for history, like what's been searched before that you might have looked at, all kinds of stuff. Save searches, you can save particular searches. We don't have any saved in here right now. Or search by set. You can create groups of artificial things together, which is very useful. There's an office hours on that. But these are some of the sets we've created, so you can go in and do that. And down here, we're going to skip this visualize and set tools for now. Sets is a part of the other set component you can do, but we're going to look down here and see basic search, advanced search, search builder, and browse. Basic search here is pretty much the same thing as this quick search up on the top. And an advanced search acts pretty much like any advanced search that you usually see. It gives you options of specific fields to search, like title, object identifier, which is usually your object accession number. If you've got other identifiers in your system, any of your identifiers you can put there as your use for your main ID. Any of your related entities, your people or businesses, dates that you want to do, and you can do the type of dates, things like that, and then just keyword, things like that. So enter any of those. If you wanted to do a more advanced thing, like you wanted to know how many mugs have the number 2025, because I'm going to do mug object identifier, I'm going to go 2024. dot, and I'm going to do an asterisk here. So I'm not looking for that number because I can't remember what I just gave that record. I'm going to do the asterisk. So anything after the asterisk, it doesn't matter. It's just going to look for that 2024 with anything after it. And actually that says mug. So in theory, if I click search down here, I will get that record that I just created, and it'll give it to you kind of in this view down here. Anytime you see this little like piece of paper with the folded corner, that's to get into the record from this list. So you can click on that. And now I'm back at that record that I just created. Anybody have any questions so far? Okay, moving along. Let me look at a couple of the other modules first, and then we'll kind of get back into it a little. Oh, actually, no, we're going to go on this for a little bit, and then we're going to get into creating entities and some more of the backend stuff after this. So going back to creating new records. So we need to say that this mug is related to something, is made by somebody, is donated by somebody. So we're going to say that for sake of argument, because I think I'm already in the system, that I'm going to be the donor of this mug. So as you go down, there's fields in the records, and this is a good place to become more familiar, is just in the sandbox, especially if you've not got anything in your own new system yet. Most of the terms are exactly what you would think they would be just by plain language, but a lot of the time if you hover over them, it'll give you like a little, what is this thing for? Like other identifiers. Another number used to record any number which may have been given to an artifact other than the number assigned in the system, that object identifier at the top. So if you're like, what do they mean, other identifiers? Whatever other number that you want. At Fairfield, and you get a lot of, if you listen to any of my tutorials and trainings, you get a lot of Fairfield examples, because I'm the collections manager at the Fairfield Museum and History Center down in Fairfield, and we were one of the first adopters of this. We were in the pilot project, so I've been working with the system for a long time and have run across many of the things that were bad about our catalog and our records coming into this that needed to be cleaned up. I've got things that have tons of numbers in my collection at Fairfield. I've got at least a couple things that have 5 numbers associated with it. There's usually like an inventory number, an accession number, a backlog accession number because nobody realized they gave the first accession number to this item, a costume inventory number from a project a few years ago, and then sometimes it'll just be like an error. Or a different, like old catalog card system number associated with it. It's a lot of fun, but the good thing is you can put all of your identifiers here, and I highly recommend any old numbers that you have for your items, put them here as well. Partially because a lot of the time, if someone's got an old exhibit catalog or reference to something, they'll be like, well, I want to see this thing. It says it's ABC 1234, and you can go, we don't use that number anymore. But if you record it in here, you can look it up easier for the other identifier, and you can note what kind of identifier it is. Inventory number, and just other number is fine, previous number, or a previous owner number. Dates, curatorial description, but mostly what I wanted to get to is the entities, because this is going to be one of the important things when you're first doing initial records, to tell the story of that object and to keep your records straight and organized, and maybe clean some stuff up that you may not realize you yourself have that you need to get fixed. So in related entities, I'm going to put myself in. Now this field is directly related to the entities module. So you do not have to create a new record every single time. It will find the record that's in your system if you've already put it in. I'm going to just start typing my name. You'll see this little kind of gear at the end start turning, and it'll be searching through the system to pull up anything that matches. So there's me. So I'm going to click on me. Also, if you find something that's not the same, it'll ask you if you want to create it, which is a nice on the fly way of doing it. But I'm already in there, so we're going to put me in there. and we're going to have the option to pull down how I'm related to this record. So I donated this. So we're going to say donated by me. Just as like a workflow note, I do credit line right after that because it's right below it. And you can just put whatever your credit line is in there. This is a free text field. So this does not relate to anything like the entities field does. This is however you want to type it in. This is in, oh, before I say that, you do have to click save every time you want to save something in this system. It does not auto-save. Coming to this from a different system, at first I didn't like that. But looking back, I'm actually really happy that you have to save first, because there were several instances in my old autosave system that I had done something wrong or deleted a paragraph accidentally, and I didn't get to it quick enough to prevent it from autosaving. So I actually like the option of doing this because the other part of that is the system is really good about reminding you that you didn't save. So if I went and did that and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, let's move on to the next record. Let's go search. It'll come up with this message and it'll say, oh, are you sure? Your changes may not be saved. And it gives you the option to leave and say, oh no, I didn't want to save those changes. Or you can cancel and stay here and go, oh, okay, yeah, let me save that. It'll kind of spin and work for a second and then it'll be saved. So now if I click this little next thing again, it's fine. It'll just do whatever. And I'm here and I'm already at the bottom. I'm going to say the save thing really. And that works with anything in the system. Just when in doubt, just click the save button and you're fine. So also going down, if I go back down and look at that log again, now I can see that we've edited this. We put the names in and now we added this information. This is why it's also a really good idea to give everybody individual logins for this, because then you can see who was doing what. I had a volunteer come and tell me that she accidentally deleted something. This is before I had the settings set properly. But I could find her and find out exactly what she did and put that back together because I could see her login here. Okay. Let's see. I think what's going to be most useful for this. Again, anytime you're not sure of what a field's supposed to be, you may not have an exhibition label for something. Oh, who is it? Somebody asked me about the back end relating to this. Yeah, you asked me.
Yeah, that was me. Like
Yep.
specifically what parts of this will show up to people who are accessing this and
Yep.
what parts will not.
Yes, thank you, because I was just starting to think of going there. I'm like, there was actually a question about this. So we do have a public portal. So if you want your collections to be available on the web, talk to us. We'll make sure that you're syncing. There's no extra fee or charge. Everything's all included. But we do have to have tech set you up to have your records be live on the public portal. I'm just going to go to that really quick if anyone's not been there, and that'll be a good example. So this is the public portal. We just revised it last year with some lovely, fabulous grant money from a couple different places. They're all credited at the bottom. And everybody that's on the public portal is available through this site. So you don't have necessarily your own site. You can filter stuff down to like just your items, but everybody kind of consolidates here, which actually I kind of love because you can see how many other institutions have something similar to what you have. And it gives you the options to look at collections. You can go to a guide on how to search objects or archives. If you go to institutions, you can browse by institution, or you can see a map. There's a transcribe feature, which there's an office hours about, and we'll get into later, and we can have other meetings about that. Galleries, to be able to create galleries of your own selected items, which we're hoping to do some improvements on in this next year. Again, similar to your own backend system, to your own instance, quick search box at the top, and then an option for an advanced search as well. I usually find for this, I'm looking really broad. So I want to see a lot of like very broad examples of things. What appears on here will depend on how detailed your records are. Whether somebody's able to find something, find your collections or not, will depend on how detailed your records are. If you just want to go in and poke around and see what other people are doing, you can just put in a random term. We did put some terms in here that rotate and change around. Just if you're like, I always get to a site, I'm like, I don't know what to search for. And if I got here, I'd be like, oh, bicycle. Okay, let's search for bicycle. And there is another advanced search link here as well. As you go down, there's blocks to go straight to objects, archives, institutions again here. There's also very random highlights generated here at the bottom. This changes every so often and is pulled from a bunch of different institutions. But if you're going through and you're like, oh, I want to know more about this guy, you can click on that guy and go to that record. There's a back over here to go back to all of your results / back to the home page down here. And then there's featured galleries, which you can get to these same galleries by that gallery button at the top. So going into the actual record, and we'll compare this with some of the other records. I'm going to this lady. You'll see her a lot. She's one of my Fairfield objects, and she's got a pretty full record, so she's a good one to look at. So I'm going to search for her. It'll come up with results for archives, people and organizations. So she's in as an entity, so it comes up as a person here. And then things that show up with her name. There's 5 objects in the portal that relate to her. This is actually who I'm looking for, this portrait. So the fields that'll show up, you'll see the main title. In this case, the alternate title or the subtitle is oil painting. And you'll always see from the institution, goes through automatically. The entities are listed here. In order to see your entity listed, they have to be public access. Put a pin in that because we'll get to that a little bit later. Plus, I just did I'm going to say this a million times. I just did an office hours about it to get into more detail. You'll get the date. It's usually just the date manufactured, created. There's not any, I think there's patent date, publication date, things like that. You're not going to see donated date. So some of the date types are not included because nobody needs to know when it was donated. You'll see the medium and technique, things here. You'll see a description, and I'll get into the description in a second. You'll see the credit line. You will not see the donor themselves actually listed here. You'll just see whatever's in the credit line. So if Mrs. Oliver Gould Jennings wanted to be an anonymous donor, I would put in my credit line, gift of an anonymous donor, but I could still link her to the record from my back end. So only I'm going to see it. So in your own instances, you are the only ones in your logins that'll be able to see that. We don't see your records unless you put it up here on the public portal. You'll see the accession / ID number. There's links to other subjects and things down here. There's a office hours on this. Things like subject headings like Library of Congress subject headings, Getty's Art and Architectural Thesaurus headings are here, so that she's got all of these things related to oil paintings, portraits. So I can click on this. Ruben Moulthrop's her artist. So I can click on him and I'd see other stuff in the system that might be by this person. And she's actually got her own authority record, not just an entity record, but an authority record in Library of Congress. So I could click on that to see anybody else in the system that might have that there. So a word about description. So pretty much for stuff that's public is pretty much stuff that you would expect to see in a record. All the main stuff, title, date, description, credit line, object number, things like that. So going back, I'm going to go back to Fairfield for a second. And we're going to search for Mary. So also a note here, when I said, so this is my own login in Fairfield Museum. So when I said you can do customize your landing page to however you want it. I have mine here, customized. Here are my counts. I've got an advanced search form visible. I've got a record of newly created items listed. I've got a random picture generator up here. What else? Processing status, which I just added last week. You can do all kinds of stuff. Recent logins. So I can see on here that, I logged in yesterday, my curator logged in yesterday, my intern logged in yesterday. And then service user, if you ever see that, if you decide to put this up, is the system going in and syncing records with the portal. And I can also see what changes people made recently. It was mostly me, although my intern was doing some records as well. So I can see what he did. Oh, and just actually, so this is kind of a cool note. If you're doing projects, especially when you have a lot of volunteers, to be able to go in and see what people are working on, if you wanted to see what the recent changes were. So I can go into Mark's edited anti-trolley broadside. Here's the information about that. We have an image related to it. Oh, and I can talk about this because I skipped over that before, I'm sorry. If you have an image or something related to it, you'll see a little thumbnail up here. You'll see, again, where you are. We're editing a document. The document's current location, current physical location will show up here. So this is where it's stored at Fairfields. Locations never show up in the public records. So wherever you have your things stored, this is in our main storage area, in our flat files, flat file drawer 2. That does not show up in the portal. No physical locations ever show up there. And then you can go down the pages like here. It also has, if you have an accession lot, have it related to accession lot, it'll show up here. And actually, let me just go do what I was going to tell you. So if I go into the log, I can go down and see that this is the whole history of this record. So this was created by one of the volunteers. I did some editing on it. I go up, our previous librarian did some editing, our previous curator did some editing. I did some more editing, and then yesterday our intern added some dimension notes and things to it here. So you can kind of go through and see the life of the object. So you always know what's going on with it. Also, like if worse comes to worse and something gets screwed up and somebody puts wrong information or gets their records confused and puts wrong information in something, you can go back and actually, rather than have us try to retrieve a previous backup, you can go back and highlight this, and it lets you like copy and paste it like back into the record. So if you're like, I just wrote a great like paragraph on this thing, and somebody came through and accidentally overwrote it because they were in the wrong record, you can go back, that information will still be there, and copy it back in. Okay, I'm going back to basic information up here. So a word about the description part. Oh, I was going to search for Mary. Hold on. Oh, let me make a note so I'm not losing track and forgetting to tell you something. So I wanted to tell you one other thing while we're here. As far as navigation goes, you'll see these little icons over here. I'm going to kind of go in reverse order from right to left. If you click on this information, and again, it'll kind of give you a blob if you're floating over it, see more information about this record. It'll tell you what sets it's in, those that I mentioned briefly. It'll say when the record was created and when it was last changed. You don't always need to get into that, which is why it's usually collapsed, but sometimes it's interesting. So I'm going to collapse that again. This little house is a way to set a home location for something. And that is different than the regular location. I'm going to say there's an office hours about this. And we'll probably go over something like this in like a 102 level training. This little duplicate thing is a duplicate this document. This is handy if you're entering some things that are very similar. You can just kind of copy it and then edit the new record. I use it every once in a while, not a ton. This little circular arrow, square arrow thing is to change the type of the object. So if you go in, you can change, this is in as a document, which is correct. But if somebody put it in incorrectly, or in the instance of people who have migrated records, if we had to make a blanket guess and make something like an object, but you need to go in and change it, because a lot of time we may not know what it is when we're doing the migrations, and it's something you'll have to go in and change. You can go in and change this here. So we can change this from a document to any of those other selections, physical object, still image, something like that. I'm not going to do that because this is fine, so I can cancel. And then this watch, unwatch this record just marks something for watch. I don't use this a lot. I've got a couple things marked. It's probably good for working with volunteers and interns and things like that. I've not used it a ton. Okay. We're going to go a little bit. I'm going to talk about descriptions. We're going to take a quick break and come back. So for the description part, let me go to Mary since I'm still in Fairfields. And I go to her a lot, so she's in here already. Sometimes depending on the way you have your system set, it'll save your last entered thing. Also a good thing to take note of is once you're in and you've gone to a few records, for anybody who's got records in, you'll see this little history option. So any of the records that you've looked at in like this session will show up as options here. So I've looked at objects. So if I hover over the objects, it'll say I was on the oh yeah, I wanted to go back to that record. So if you click on that, it pops back to that record rather than having to remember the number or say I was on a broadside, I think it was about trolleys. You can just go back to that record. So Mary, so here she is. Oh, quick note, you can click on this thumbnail and make it bigger. And one of the things I do love about the system is the interface for looking at photos is fantastic. You can move it around, you can really zoom in. We have a pretty good high-res image of her, so it's pretty good. You can see all the cracks in the painting and things like that. You can zoom in pretty far. You can also up here, you'll see a little 1 of 2, and you can arrow over and see something else that is like a document that we scanned that we put in with her. This is an old label that had been used in an exhibit, that had been used in this exhibit. And your close is up here. This is a good thing to go in and play around in the sandbox because there are some images in there as well to look at. And you can see how that works. So in the description, you'll note there's 2. There's a curatorial description and a public access description. So technically, I always look at the curatorial description as more of a technical nuts and bolts. Basically the seated figure from the waist up, right arm leans on reddish brown table. I'm getting all the keywords in there. I'm getting all the descriptions if I was trying to tell someone what this looks like who can't see it, like if we didn't have a media attached to this. Holds a small volume in her left hand, wearing dark gray dress, white kerchief, goes through everything like that. This field, the way it's set up, is a more rich text field on us, so you can highlight things, bold things, all of that. Also, it gives the option where this little arrow is, rather than having to scroll up and down. If you click on this and drag it, it makes the field bigger. So if you're trying to read that whole thing or type a whole thing, you don't have to scroll up and down all the time. You can just continue scrolling and dragging this out so you can see the whole thing, which is very handy. So this is just the technical description of her. Because we've got some existing, just more information, because you're looking at the image. If she's online, you don't care that she's wearing that blackish grayish dress with a kerchief and a bonnet because you can see it. We want those things there for searches to be able to search on keywords. So this is much more of an interpretive text about the portrait. This is when this was painted, about 5 years after the death of her husband, prominent patriot in the American Revolution. There's no known portraits of him, noting that she was unusually educated, talking about the letters and the books and stuff in the portrait. So this just gives you a really basic note about that. So going to the public portal, that's the description that shows up here, is that kind of interpretive text / like exhibit label text shows up here. Back to Fairfield. If there is nothing written in the public access description, this has priority. So this will always show up above anything else. But if there's nothing entered into this field, it will default to the curatorial description. which is usually fine. Majority of my items in Fairfield, I do not have a public access description because if I don't have an existing object label, I don't have the knowledge or usually the time to go through and write and create a public access description. This might be, you know, something easier to do if you're doing an exhibit and you can put the exhibit labels in or something, you can put them in there. So just know that anything that you put in the curatorial description, if you go public access, it will show up if there's nothing in the public access description from the curatorial. So don't put anything that's proprietary information or, you know, don't put anything in here like, this is supposed to be an anonymous donation, but Mary Smith gave it to us. It was really nice of her, but she doesn't want to be known. You know, don't put that information here. Just put basic description of an item. For things like that don't show up when you do need to record that information, scrolling down. Oh, anytime you see again with this little plus, if you click on this plus, it adds another instance of this field. So for like exhibition label, I can add as many entries on this as I want. And if you're like, oh no, I forgot, I don't want that, you can click that little X and it gets rid of it. Same with this, if you click that, it'll delete it. So we have at the bottom notes fields. Notes fields are not public access. They're never public access. So you can always put anything that you need to know in your records, but you don't want the public to know about, can go in a notes field. I use the notes field for tracking exhibition history, what she's been used in, any other related objects, things that I don't have another good field for. She's actually a really good example because she has a lot of notes. The Webb Dean Stevens Museum has her red quilted petticoat. A high chest that's believed to be a wedding gift is in the collection at the Haven Museum. I can put this in other places as well, but it's a great place just to put whatever extra information. I am very pro notes on things. Oh, and we also have a silk sewing bag that belonged to her in our collection. Trying to think if there's anything else that I want to talk about with public access versus not. Those are the main things that are going to show up. And yes, I do want to leave because I didn't make any changes that I didn't want to save. Physical characteristics will show up. These notes will show up. So your measurement notes do show up, which is how she has. Oh, does she have notes in here? No, she does not have notes in here because if I go back to the record, sorry to flip around, get everybody dizzy. If I go back to her basic information and her notes fields, I have a note in here about her dimensions being wrong. Yeah, dimension note. And I also like to label my notes. That's just me. In dimensions had this is what showed up in the record, and it makes absolutely no sense because it's listing it as like a horizontal dimension versus, as you can see, she's like a portrait size. So this is I need to go in and fix this, which is why she has no dimensions in the public access, but that'll be where your public access notes show up, however you write that. But that's not usually anything that there's, you know, particular information about anyway. That's all I wanted to say about that with public versus this for now. It's just about 2 o'clock. I'm going to say let's take a like 10-minute break for everybody. If you want to go stretch your legs, unstick yourself from your chair if you're not in air conditioning, grab a drink, anything like that. So let's say meet back at 2:10. Okay, welcome back from break, you guys. Okay, so we're going to go back to the sandbox. And we are going to go back to the main landing page. And I want to talk about some of the more back-end technical stuff, like creating new users and things like that. So as you're getting into your system and working on stuff. So along this top, and little side note, as you'll see, now you see that history button because we've been into objects in the sandbox. So now you'll see like that mug record. We can hop back to that if we need to. It will not show up unless you've been in and been into a record of some sort. we'll do a quickie on this really quick. So if I go back to that mug and I go into my record that's in here, we'll see if we have time to talk about entities a little bit more. Alternate names, contact information, all kinds of information there. So we looked at this really quick. We're going to back to the main thing. And now when I go to history, now entities shows up with me because we were in that record. It's just really handy to be able to hop back and forth rather than trying to search or find a record every time. Okay, so talking about creating new entities. So you'll get your system, institution, admin level record. So you should be able to do a little bit of everything to get in and add new users. So along the top, now you're going to go to manage. So you'll only need one or two of these things. The rest of the things isn't anything that it's either not set up or not accessible for regular use or nothing that you need to get to. We're going to go down, move this down a little bit. So what we want to see from here is manage and access control. So if you go and click on that, you'll see a list of all of the users that are logged in, and then not logged in, but have access to the system, users created for them, access levels created for them. It'll just automatically go to this page. So this is everybody who's got a login for like an individual login for the sandbox. If we went into just a Fairfield for a second, if I go into manage access control here, you're going to see a much longer list because I've got interns and a bunch of other people listed in here as well. But we're going to work in the sandbox for today. So you'll see on the left-hand side, much like the other ones, to kind of see where you are, you're on the user logins portion of this. There is also user groups and then access roles. So we're actually going to look at access roles first because that'll come up very quickly when doing user logins. So if you click on user or user role access roles, sorry. These are some of the ones that are available. A couple of these are test ones that we've played around with because sandbox, but you will get administrators will be one, cataloger, and then researcher. I think right now it's only those three that you come like out of the box. So the little description tells you what is involved in that. Confers actions needed by those administrating the system. Cataloger, actions needed by those editing catalog records, and you'll see researchers only being able to view and not edit catalog entries. And then we've tweaked a couple beyond that. So let's see. Like the other records, anytime you see that paper with the little corner, it means you can go in and edit that thing. You'll see an X like that, it'll turn red, which obviously red you think bad, and that's delete. You don't want to delete those. You can go in and recreate them, but they're pretty much set up the way they need to be. We're going to look at administrators first. You can edit and change some of these around. Please talk to us to help you do this at least the initial time if you need to create any new levels of access, because you'll see as I scroll down, there's a lot of little checkboxes and a lot of little things you can tweak, and I'm still scrolling and still not at the bottom. There's a lot of stuff that you can fuss with. Some of it's not at all relevant. It's for, because this is based on like a main system, and we edited it and worked on it to do it the way we wanted to for the Connecticut Collections Group. But there's stuff like for doing library self-check-in and check-out and stuff like that. We don't, most of our groups do not have a check-in, check-out for their books. So we do not have that turned on for the system. So none of that relates to anything that you would want to do. But the main things at the top will just be like, is administrators checked off for the administrator thing? These tabs across the top are the actions that you can do. The metadata talks about the individual fields. So again, we're still in the administrator one. So we have read, edit, access to everything. And Pawtucket, you don't have to worry about, that's related to the public portal. So don't bother to go in there because you don't want to break the sync to the public portal if you're syncing to it. If you ever have any questions about it, just let us know. But this will go through and give you really detailed things. If you click at the top of this, it'll select or unselect everything. So I can select read-only access, and it'll just go down until the next grouping of things. But we're actually going to do read edit access here. And again, if I had tried to leave this page without saving it, it would yell at me, but I'm not even going to save because I didn't change anything that I want to change. So when you're, oh, let's go back to one of the other ones for a second. So let's go back to access roles for a second, and we're going to look at cataloger. And you'll see a lot of different things checked off here, whereas administrator just had that one is the administrator. You have a lot of other things checked off here that they can set preferences, they can use the quick search. Delete is not checked off on a lot of these because usually you're not going to want your general cataloging people to be able to delete things. And like I said, I mentioned that my poor intern who volunteer who accidentally deleted a whole record because she thought she'd attached the wrong image to something and wanted to delete it, in which there's other ways to do that, wanted to delete it, and she instead accidentally deleted the whole record. So I realized there was a hole in our access levels. So I went back and got rid of the delete actions for the cataloger login. Because in Fairfield right now, my curator is allowed to do more things than like a volunteer or an intern would be. We did create a volunteer/intern login as well. So the curator can still do a lot of stuff, like delete things, whereas that new volunteer intern level cannot delete anything. And we can get back to this too if anybody has any questions about this right away, or if you ever have a feel that there's a need to add or edit to these, let us know. And under metadata here, they can read access anything on this level as well. But let's go to that researcher one for a second, just as an example. Definitely different things checked off and not checked off. And when you go to the metadata, it should be read-only access, but we're in the sandbox, so it's entirely possible people are messing with it. So we're just going to do this with all of it. We want read-only access for anybody doing research. We don't want them to be able to do anything else. And actually, you know what? They don't need to see the exhibitions because they're looking at other things, and they don't need this. And you can go through and individually check things, obviously. This is just a quickie, if you don't need them to see certain things. They don't need to see storage locations. They don't need to see loans. Object representations, yeah, to be able to see them, but that's it. Annotations, I frankly don't know what these are. I've never known what this is. So don't ask me because I have no idea. But I'm going to say, as an example, we don't need to see it. Sets they don't need. So there's like endless amounts of things in here. Read only. I'm just making this up. So we'll save that. So now that researcher only access is changed. So if you ever do any tweaks and like an intern or volunteer comes in and is like, I can't see this thing that you're telling me to do, it's because you need to check off something else really individual with it. So now we're going to go to figure out how to create a new login. So we're going to go to user logins. Here's our existing ones. I have to think up of new names because I've already used Ted Tester and Susie Volunteer. I forgot about Ida Intern. So you can filter up here by different things if you're looking for a particular person that you need. If you have like hundreds of entries, you can do that. But in our case, we're creating a new user. So we are, when you create a new user, whatever you're logged in as, it'll automatically fill this in. You can type this over. It'll save as a new thing. It won't change the administrator part. Oh, and quick note. I don't know if we did it on here. Whoops. Yes, leave. Oh, we did do it on here as well. So in your system, when you get it, you're going to see your own system administrator level, and you're also going to see CTCo admin. That is our own login that we created for Dana and I to be able to get in to see your system. Please do not change that. We will not go in and change your data or do anything to move your data around without asking you if we're trying to investigate something for you. We just need to be able to get into your system from time to time if you have any problems or questions. Because a lot of the time, even if you send a screenshot or something, it's a lot easier for us to go in and look at exactly how something's behaving. So please do not do anything to that CTCo admin level or the CollectiveAccess administrator. That's really big. Just leave those as they are, please. So if you're going and creating a new user, you can, this is how we're logged into this, but you can type these over and it'll create a new person when you're doing it. So we're going to come up with a username, whatever usernames work for you, whatever makes the most sense. For Fairfield ID, you can do somebody's full name, you can do just a last name, just a first name, however you want to do it. I do it for Fairfield with first initial last name. So I'm D. Lee on Fairfield. And it seems to have worked out well for now anyway, but however, whatever is easiest for you. And it can be anything alphanumeric. You don't need to make it super complicated. You don't need to make the password super complicated. That's more of a thing than the username. The username is something they're going to be entering every time they go into the system though. So keeping that in mind. Let's see. Making sure you're writing down your username so you're not forgetting what it is in between. And your passwords. Okay. So we're putting this, we're going to have this user class is full access. That's fine. This is usually you're only going to go full access with these. And you're going to write a password in. Note about passwords in a second once we get this created. And again, your passwords can be anything. They just have to match. And the only people that can get in and change this is the administrator. So a lot of the time your password is going to be change me in your new system. So you should go in and change your password to whatever you want it to be. You can let us know what that is or not if you want to back it up. But if you ever change it and forget it and need to change it back or need to get back in, let us know. And because we can get in, we can go change that for you if you need to. So you're going to put in your passwords. We're going to put last name of these people or the names of these people in. You will need an email. So even if you want to put in, you can put in theirs if you want, or you can put in your own system email. So for this purpose, I'm just going to put in our CLH, our CTCo email or the @ symbol. There we go. SMS numbers if you want to get text messages. I don't even have that set up, so you don't really need to. And I've never honestly had a need for it or never tested, so I don't even know if it works. Related entity optional. If you're already in the system, you can put yourself in this. I haven't used that ever. By default, when you go in and create something, this little account is activated button is checked off. Always double check to make sure that is checked and you're ready to go. So you want to figure out what role you want for this person. I'm going to make this person a cataloger, and we're going to get to groups in a second. I'm going to come back and do that in a second. Organization, email address, all this other stuff. This is not required. If anything, I just usually change it to Connecticut just for kicks. Not really required. So we're going to click save. If everything worked, it'll come up. If your system's set this way, it'll say if you want to save it. I do not. very important, go in and double check your new thing to make sure that it works before you give it to them. So to log out of your login, down at the very, very bottom, you say, you can see who you're logged in as. There's another preferences button down here. This is also, there's an office hours. And then there's a log out. So you click log out and it gets back to this screen. So you want to log in again with that login that you just created. The username is not case sensitive. The password is. However, I'm still going to type it the way that I typed it on that. And we're going to see if I can type properly. Okay, and we're on here. So because it's a new system, none of this dashboard information is set up. So you can either do that for somebody if you want to set anything up for them, or they'll be able to log in and do it themselves, because this is now the login for this person only. It does not affect anybody else's individual logins. But now you can get into stuff from here. So you want to make sure you've got new, find, manage. You see the manage list is a lot shorter because as the cataloger, they cannot do a lot of the things that the administrator can. So like that access thing is not there. Other things are there, which is fine. And it'll totally depend on that login. And obviously no history because we haven't done a history. We've not been into any records yet. And there's another thing missing. I can never remember. Oh, import. So import's something done in the back end for when you're first doing major migrations and things like that. But that disappears when you're on this like cataloger level. Same as before, if you just want to get into your system somehow, just hit the asterisk and go. And you'll see that this person has all of these things show up. We're going to log out of them for a second, and we're going to go back and check that. That's it. So we're going to go check out this manage access control, user groups. I'm going to look at really quick. This is just a way of creating groupings of people. Really useful if you are doing projects on things, if you have things that you want to let your volunteers or your catalogers access, but not everybody. This comes up when doing creating those sets that I mentioned really briefly. And also you can create your own custom displays of things. Yes, there's an office hours about that as well. And it's an easy way of giving people access to certain things. So I've got a few created here just for kicks. I've got all of the administrators. I just created that as a random name, just anybody who's a system administrator. Cataloger, anyone who can add and edit catalog entries, everyone. Like I have everyone that's got a login at my museum has like an all Fairfield thing for some things if I want them to be able to see something. Exhibition team, people who are involved in planning. These are all stuff that I've created. I think there's only one or two out of the box things. And I've got like a volunteers one, any volunteer access. So when you are in working on an access login for somebody or creating a new one, let me go back to, oh, I'm here. I need to go access role or user logins. I'm sorry. Let me go to William Bear. And I'm going to edit his record. So a note about going in if you're editing somebody's record for something, it'll look here like there's nothing in password, like it won't even have those little dots across it. So for, I don't know, 2 or 3 years, I thought I had to change the password every time I went in to do it. You don't have to do anything with that. Just leave it blank, do all the other changes that you want to do and just save it again, and their password will remain the same. So for instance, I'm leaving him as a cataloger, but I'm also going to add him to the cataloger group. I want him on the everyone thing. So you won't be able to just straight click it from one to one. You'll have to do the like the multiple select like you do on any platform and hit the control button and then left click on that again to select more than one item. So I'm going to put him on the cataloger team, the everyone team, and the exhibition team. So anything that I mark off for that, they'll have access to. So I'm going to save that. This does come up later, and that's something you don't have to do right away, depending on what you want to do, and you can edit that and add it later on as people go and as you come up with different projects and things. Oh, quick note here, under your first initial, the user logins, you'll see who's marked as active and who's not. So like this test person I have marked as inactive. If you go in and say you don't have this logged in, well, I need me to be active, but I need a new one. Inactive is our username. If you don't enter the same confirmed password, it'll come up with a little error saying that it isn't the same thing. I'm just going to do the CTCo email again. So say for some reason you didn't have this account as active, they wouldn't be able to get in at all, but I'm actually going to do this for a second. If you forget to check off one of the roles, I'm just going to show you what it looks like. It's like a troubleshooting if you're trying to do it. And I know I'm going to forget what the username is as soon as I navigate away. So we're going to save that. So if you don't do anything right, it'll come up with errors. So the password does not match. So it doesn't come up right away. It'll just do it when you go to save it. I don't know why I'm using this password because I can never type it right. Okay, so let's try that again. Okay, so I'm not coming up with any interns. It comes up with this thing. That's the way my system's set. So I'm going to log out. I'm going to log in as that person. So now you'll notice when you come in, you'll see this like initial message and the collective access, but there's no search box and there's no selection across the top. So you're in the system, but you don't have a level, an access level assigned. I've done it a couple of times. I've definitely had a couple new users come in and be like, what happened? I can't get to a thing. There's no buttons because you need to select the other thing. So there's a bunch of times where you're going to have to go in and out of things to be able to make sure that you have everything done the way you want. So we're going to log out of this one. We're going to log back in as the regular administrator password. Go back to, oh, actually another thing you can do with this, honestly, and I didn't even think about it until one of our colleagues out in Minnesota, who's a very similar system to ours that we chat all the time with them, pointed out, if you duplicate this login, you can kind of do the same thing. It gets a little confusing, but I'm logged into this one. I'm going to go to manage access control. I'm going to find that new user here, and I'm going to make them a volunteer. So now when I save this, I'm going to do this over here so I don't have to do it all the time. I'm going to log in as that user. So now that I've got that checked off as belonging to an access level, now you can see at the top the new find and manage. And I did them as a volunteer, so they have much more limited capability to everybody else. So you see that manage is all the way down. It's only the things that are really like lower level. But you still have your find objects. I've got them locked out of, or we've got them locked out of here of a bunch of things. Just because, again, sandbox, it can be set to whatever. But you'll see the options up here in that quick search boxes here. Anybody have any questions? Is there anything you want me to go over again? Is there anything you want to know that's vital versus not vital? Anything like that? Okay. So let's go back to, let's go back to those different ways of viewing things for a second. And we'll also, actually, I'm going to look at entities really quick, because that's going to be one of the bigger ones that people will either need to clean up or you'll be wanting to start to put in. So we're just going to go back to history, and we're going to go, oh, Roman Fairfield. Let me go back to the sandbox. And let me log, get rid of this person because I want to be us again. So you notice that I logged out as the CTCo or as the admin administrator. So now that history doesn't show up because I logged out. So it does not keep your history from each session. So now I have to like start up again. So, you know, usually something that's best to do is log out. If you're just running off to lunch and you're locking your computer or something, that's fine. Totally up to you. So now we're logged in as ourselves. I'm going to look up that mug again that I just entered, that there's apparently one. Oh, and a POW camp drinking mug. Interesting. Mug. So your entity records, when you're adding, so we're going to add a new relationship to this. I'm going to put, I'm going to make somebody up because I don't know if Brian wants, my husband wants to be in the system or not. So we're going to make up related to that other guy that we just created. Who knew? Oh, I'm in that other person again. Hold on. To log in as myself. So mug, we're going down to entities to add the former owner. So you'll notice as you go, I'm trying to enter this person in. They don't exist, so we're going to want to create them. So you can do it up here under new and entity, individual organization, or if you're in the middle of a record, you can just do it through here. Sometimes a little bit faster than hopping back and forth. So we're going to click on create. And now you get just like a little box for this to create the entity. You can choose from here whether it's an individual or an organization. This collective access ID is an automatically generated one, so don't worry about that, as is the entity identifier, because this is just internal system numbers that we don't need to add. Preferred labels, names, all of this stuff. So just to get into the record, I usually will scroll down, and I won't do a bunch with this. I just want the person to exist to start off. So we're going to, oh, you'll notice in the preferred label, so it has a place for the prefix. I usually use this more for like military titles or like captain, sergeant, reverend, things like that, as opposed to like Mr. I'll use it for Mrs., for wives of people. The forename, middle name, a surname, any suffix, senior, junior, the third, things like that. If you just put a display name, this is what came up from me putting it in that other entry. It will parse it out to the other places and usually does a pretty good job. So we're just going to go straight to add individual, and it's processing, and it'll put you right back to your object record. Again, you see in the upper left the editing physical object. And we're going to say that this guy was, this was owned by him. And then you can click save. And now you see them as related to that. Anytime you see the underline like this, that means it's linking to that other record. So you don't have to go into an entity record or go find this. You can go directly to this person's record here. and put in any other information that you want. And also to double check that this sorted out properly between forename and surname. So most of the time it's pretty good. Sometimes it'll mess up if you're putting a Mrs. in. You want to make sure that it's in the prefix where it's supposed to be. I always double check them just in case. For public access, to that public access thing, the usual things will show up for people. My rule of thumb, workflow wise, is I don't make anybody public access unless they're 100 years old. There is an asterisk to this. Been dead for 100 years, sorry. But that's just like a general thing, just if I don't know anything about them. Modern artists, if you want to have modern artists show up on your public portal page, you just kind of have to know that you have to be careful about the information that you're putting in. So pretty much the only fields that show up in a public access person's record are their names. I think nationality shows up, life dates will show up. Most of this does not. Biography is the big one. So biography will show up in public access, but notes does not. So it's nice to have a biography for people just to track where they came from, especially if they're a modern artist. You can put an artist statement there, that's fine. For some people, I have like a family history is what I normally do, coming from more of a history museum than an art museum. So I think, oh yeah, for Mary, if I click on her record in the public access part, and I just have her as associated because we don't have like subject as a field. This is my bio, and this is what shows up for Mary. Her life dates are 1736 to 1818. And I will usually do this, something similar to this for a person's bio if they're historic. Daughter of this person and this person, was born in this date at Wallingford. And marriage information, sometimes I'll have children information, things like that. So something you would want in a historic person, you can put here. If you're working with, say, a current artist who is also the donor, because I know this happens in quite a few cases, like at Mattatuck, Westport Public Art Collection, Housatonic Art Museum. This happens a lot with all of these guys. So hopping back to the sandbox, if you've got like the artist statement, you put that in the biography, it'll show up on the public portal. So that's fine. If you wanted extra information about this person, if you did have more actual biographical information and family information, put it in notes. And again, you can add as many notes to something as you want, but I would put it there. So if the day ever comes that you want to make that more of a public accessible thing, you can move it up to bio. But just know that you have to make somebody public access for them to show up. If you make someone public access, like a modern current living artist, to attach to a record, they will show up as the creator, and like they've donated it to you. They will show up as the creator with whatever biographical information you may have put in, but they will not show up as the donor, whatever you put in as the credit line, because sometimes people don't want them to know that the artist is the donor. You know, there's always weird things like that. If you ever come across an instance like that and need more help with that, just let us know. One handy thing about that I'll say about names and entities is the alternate names part. I'm gonna leave that for a second. Actually, I'm going to go back to me as an example. So we have entities. Oh no, we didn't go to me yet. But we'll go click in. So see, you'll see here too, like I might be showing up in these, but you'll see I don't relate to any of these other ones, but you'll see like an entity +1, and that's, we're looking for my record. Alternate names is great for women and married women who have multiple names. Oh, actually, I will go to Mary McFish for this in Fairfield really quick. So if I search for her, so we're back in Fairfield. We're searching for her. She's related to 8 records somehow, or mentioned. related to 3 entities. So here's her, these people she's related to. So we're going to click on her and we're going to go to alternate names. So Mary was married like 4 times. I don't even think I have all of her names here, but it's useful to know which names are which and what you use them for. And there's multiple office hours about entities and things. But given her names, you can put somebody in as an alternate name, as a maiden name, married name, however many name instances you have. So if you're, let me do it this way too. You're going into search for, let's go find entities. We're just going to do a basic search. We don't know my actual name, but we know I'm Mrs. Bryan. We can search for this and I show up because I put Mrs. Bryan Lee in as one of my alternate names. So which is really useful when you're dealing with older collections, older institutions, older records, because I'm sure you may have noticed that over the years, the preference for whether you're Mrs. Diane or Mrs. Bryan changes over time. A lot of the time, we don't have our own names. We're only Mrs. Bryan. But it's good to have that in there. I did have an instance at my old museum that somebody came in looking for, that happened because that museum had been around since very early days, since 19th century, basically. So 1825 was when that was founded. So there's a lot of weird women's names in there. So someone called or showed up, they were on a field trip and just happened to ask. They're like, my grandmother donated a flag to you guys. And in my head, and this happens many times, somebody donated something, I'm trying to track it down. I'm like, oh, okay, great. I just had an intern working on the flags. I'm like, all the information's in there. I should be able to pull this thing right up. This flag even sounds familiar from what this woman's saying. So I start searching through my database, can't find it. Because she's like, oh, her name was Helen Smith. I'm like, perfect. So I look it up, look up for the flag, look up Helen Smith. She's not turning up. I'm like, this is weird. I know this flag's in here, but the way we entered them, I couldn't pull out her specific flag. So I'm looking again and it finally dawns on me. And I went back to find the woman. I think she was still there on this field trip. And I'm like, I'm so sorry to ask again. I'm still looking for you. I know, pretty sure I know what you're talking about. What was your grandmother's name? And she's like, Helen Smith. I'm like, no. What was her married name? She's like, Mrs. Helen Smith. I'm like, I'm so sorry, I'm asking this wrong. What was her husband's name? And she's like, George. I'm like, so she was Mrs. George Smith? And she's like, yeah. I look up Mrs. George Smith. She popped right up because I had that in my that was how she was known in my old system. And that's how a lot of the times your old records will be if you're copying stuff from like notes or tags or old catalog records, all you'll have is Mrs. Robert Smith. You won't have her name unless you start doing some research information. So this is something that's really good to know. So for a couple of you folks that migrated, and I've talked to you about working on data cleanup, that's something good to know to put in your multiple names for people in there. And this is why I on purpose put all of my names in as an example for this. Let's see. We've got a little time left. Does anybody, is there anything you feel like you need to know that I'm forgetting to tell you that I think is vital? There's a lot more to learn, obviously, and we can go over, there'll be more training sessions, but just while we have you all here, if anybody has any questions while you're thinking, if anybody comes up with anything, let me talk about displays really quick. When you go in, pull up the records, this is the spreadsheet view. You can change this view. The way to do this is by this little, I call it a gear. Some people call it a pickle. Depends if you're hungry or not. If you hover over it, you'll see display options. So when you click on this, it gives you another little box. And the main thing that you want to look at is the layout and display. So there's a lot of displays listed here just because it's the sandbox, so people have played around. Usually you're only going to have 4 or 5. It's going to be like the general object report, something else. These will go across multiple places in the system. So we're going to go in the general object report, but we're also going to change this to thumbnails. And we're going to click on this. So if you have images attached to your records, you'll be able to see this in like a lightbox or thumbnail view on this. So especially if you know what something looks like, but you're not entirely sure what it's called, this is a really good way to be able to zip through and see things. You can set this to show a certain number of objects. You'll get down to the bottom, and it's at the top as well, that you'll see on you're on page 1 of 36. So there's 36 more pages of this for all these records. So if you click next, it'll just go through. And if you want to look at the record, if you want to look at the image, you'll get this little quick look, so you can pull it up and look at the image really close if it's something you want to decide if it's what you want. Or if you click on the little highlighted bit there, you'll click into the record itself to look at something. If you've done that and you want to go back to your results of whatever you got up here in the top left, you're on record 70 of 848. But if you click on this hot link of results, it goes back to where you were. If you've got something, you've got, a couple hundred pages and you want to skip forward ahead to see where you are, you can jump to a page. So I want to jump to page 30, click the little arrow, and now we're on this other bunch of stuff that does not have images. And some of these do. So it's nice if you're just looking for a particular thing. As you're searching through and putting the display on, you can filter things out here through this little, I think it looks like weaving or textile, or like little sliders on something, but it just means filter. If you click on that, it comes up filter results by and gives you different fields that you can filter by. So you can come under has media and say, oh, there's 107 records with media. I want to just look at those. And it'll just appear those. So we have 107 records that have objects. If we want to filter further, you can refine results even more. And you can see types and see that there's 2 audio, 5 documents, 17 physical objects, and 83 still images. So let's see what physical objects we have. So now we're filtering by has media and physical object, and there's 17 records that have those things that people have created in here. And that you can go through and go into the record and see what they are. And then if you want to get rid of one of those, you can by clicking on the X. So now we have down to 722, or you can clear everything. Trying to think if there's any other good navigation questions, but those are some of the main ones. Let's see. Go back to display again, because I just think display is a good option to look at things and work on certain projects. The other one is, and do come onto the sandbox with records in here and play around with these a little bit. There's also list is basically the spreadsheet. There's full, which is kind of a weird one. I've not used it a ton, but it can come in handy. It kind of gives you like the equivalent of like an index card, catalog card, with certain fields from what you picked for display, and an image if there is one, and just like a blurb related storage, stuff like that, as you go down. So depending on how you want to look at something. Sometimes this is good for handout if you're ever creating a list of new objects to show to the board. You can print out something like this that has just the information that they want to know in a little thumbnail. It's nice. Going back to the display options, you have the option, if you've got deaccessioned objects in your collection, you have the option here to show or hide them. I have a bunch of deaccessioned items that I never delete deaccessioned records, always keep them. They were part of your collection. They are things that you want to document, but this gives you the option of whether they show up in a search or not. Oh, this is also good to know too. You can sort by different things. My preference is usually I sort by title or identifier. I frankly don't know what relevance sorts by. It's one of the ones that always comes up first. I'm like, what do you mean relevance? Relevance to what? My asterisk? I'm not sure. So you can go by title, click anytime you click that little side arrow, it'll search and change things for you. So now you're seeing different items. Sort. Under display options, again, this is just fun to play around with to see what's there. I've done a couple projects on things, and this works out well if you're trying to do exhibitions or find locations for things. I've got one I just had. Oh, registrar info here is the one I wanted to change that to the other list. This is just things that like a registrar, like somebody putting records into the system might want to know. If there's an image, identifier, title, alternate title, date, object status, dimensions, like that's a very basic core skeletal information about something. Nice and handy to have like this. And you can change these however you want. This is probably something we'll talk about in the next training, like the 102 level training is talking more about displays and custom displays and how to do things in your institution depending on what you're working on. So, okay. I think that's probably pretty good for today. Unless anybody has any questions, I'm gonna stop recording.